I'm Darrell Bowman. I'm interviewing Jack Wingate today as a video for submission into the American Fisheries Society Fish Management Section Hall of Excellence. So Jack, how did you become involved with the American Fisheries Society, and why did you decide to be part of the Fish Management Section?
Well, in the early 1970s, when I went to Southern Illinois University, my major professor, Bill Lewis, took me to the state chapter meeting in Central Illinois. Then this was during my first year there in Carbondale. And I joined AFS that same year in 1970 because I believed that if I was going to go into fisheries, that I should belong to the profession of the fisheries biologist. I joined the fish management section when it was formed, as it was doing what I was doing. I was working on applied research for fish managers, and this was certainly right along the same thing as what I was doing. To me, the fish management section has served as a great forum for the interchange of ideas and information among managers and researchers.
So you were in on the first Fish Management Section meeting?
Yes.
When it was created?
Yes.
That's amazing.
The fish management section, fish culture, quite a number of them were created over the years that I was involved with it all.
Outstanding. Well, given that, how did being involved with AFS help your career?
I believe that by my belonging and being active in the American Fisheries Society, enhanced my career by enabling me to meet the folks that were doing the on-the-ground work around the country. If I had questions on a technique, I knew who to call for assistance because I had met them at a meeting or I had read their papers in the AFS journals. Many of the research ideas that we implemented in Minnesota had been honed at meetings where we had discussion with other researchers and kind of fleshed things out, and so I think we ended up with a far better research project. Additionally, I've always felt that my experiences that I've had within AFS over my 30-some years of being involved helped me to be a better leader for my job.
Certainly, certainly. Did you have a mentor or individuals who greatly influenced your career?
Well, there's certainly quite a number. I think that's the case for all of us in the profession. But one that stands out is Bill Lewis, who was my major professor at Southern Illinois. And he probably had more influence on my career than any of the other professionals that I have worked with and with whom of those that I highly respect. He instilled in me that you should always act like a professional. You should be professional. Also the belief that you must be ethical in your science and in your research, and to always be honest and upfront with your views that are based on good science. And particularly the latter is I think, very difficult for many of us in the profession to do, because we think we know what is the best way to go for resource management. We know what the facts are, but we end up going beyond what is good science to being an advocate for the resource. And I think a lot of us have the potential to lose credibility if we're not careful in how we do that.
Right. Very good. Jack, did you ever consider other careers, and if so, why?
Well, I taught for 5 years before I went into the fisheries field. I enjoyed teaching. It was fun. It was particularly fun to watch the light bulb go on in some of these young heads. When I was teaching in high school, I was fortunate that I taught physics and chemistry, so I didn't have to deal with the troublemakers by and large. But I did enjoy doing that. But I found that I probably enjoyed it more working in the field, working with fish. I got my start doing this working on shovel-nosed sturgeon on the Missouri River below Gavin's Point Dam. I was helping out a friend of mine that was working on his PhD at the University of South Dakota, working there in the river. And I enjoyed the field work enough that even when I had become an administrator supervising the research unit in Minnesota, that I made it a point to work on every research project every year, if at least for a half a day to a day. And it enabled me to feel connected with what was happening. Plus, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Plus, I didn't have to worry about, are the data sheets kept in the right manner? I could go out, I could pull nets, I could dip fish. You know, I could be the laborer out there and thoroughly enjoy it. And part of it, you know, with the career that I had, is I always felt that I could count the number of times on one hand that I didn't want to go to work and still have fingers left. And I've always been a great believer, when you go to work, you should be able to have fun. And I enjoyed myself.
Excellent. Excellent. I know you did. How do you think AFS can help prepare our profession for the challenges ahead?
I think quality education is the most important part in preparing young professionals to function managing the aquatic resource. And I think that professional certification by the American Fisheries Society provides that basis for coursework that's beneficial once you start working. And I know a lot of people would like to water down these requirements, saying, well, we don't need all of that. I respectfully disagree. To me, the fisheries profession is still about fish, and it's about their habitat. But it's becoming increasingly more collaborative in that we need to work with other disciplines in managing and protecting the aquatic resource. To me, it's become imperative that we work with the public to incorporate both science and human dimensions into the final management decision. And if we don't do this, the resource will surely suffer.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Agreed. Well, Jack, specifically on this issue today, what does being inducted into the Hall of Excellence for the American Fisheries Society mean to you?
It was a great personal honor, and it seemed to me to indicate that the work that I had done throughout my career was valued. I'm quite humbled to be in the Hall of Excellence, particularly when I view the accomplishments that previously inducted members have in their resume.
Mm-hmm. I'm humbled to be interviewing you for the Hall of Excellence. Well, Jack, what do you believe is or was your biggest contribution to fisheries in your career?
I felt that by my working to change how the Department of Natural Resources in Minnesota hired new employees and promoted existing employees, improved the way that the fisheries resources in Minnesota were managed, and that will serve as my legacy. The research unit provided many tools for the fish manager to better manage the aquatic resource in Minnesota. And the one that probably stands out as being among the best of the ones that we accomplished was that there was a strain of musculans that was being stocked. And the research unit did the research to show that fish never got over 40 inches in length. We found another strain of muskie that would get 50 plus inches at maturity. We found where they could be trapped and spawned. And the section of fisheries made the decision to change to the new strain of muskie. And I think, as all of us are aware that have been managing the resource, change does not come easy. And so we went through quite a series of discussions before we finally got to that decision. Today, there's a true trophy musculunge fishery in Minnesota. And that's another thing that quite proud of, that the research unit was able to do the work that led to this. And the other thing is I'm also quite proud that the research unit during my tenure in Minnesota had over 100 peer-reviewed publications. Most state management agencies do not publish to this extent.
That's awesome. Agreed. Jack, what words of wisdom do you share with students and young biologists?
Well, I think the first most important thing is always use good data. Whenever you go to make a natural resource recommendation, use good data. Don't apologize for the data that you have. It's the only data. But make sure that it's the best that there is available. And the other thing is, you present that data, do not skew it towards your personal beliefs. Then if you do, you're getting into what Bob Lackey refers to as stealth advocacy. Learn to present your data in a clear, concise, and understandable way, both to your peers and to the public. Because ultimately, your interaction with your peers and with the public will aid you in working toward an informed decision to protect and enhance the aquatic resource.
Outstanding advice. Jack, I'd like to ask you your thoughts about other inductees. Which fellow inductees influenced you the most, and how?
Well, I think I know most of the inductees, and they've all had an influence on me in my interactions with them over the years. But probably the two that stand out in my mind is having the most influence on me, and the two that I have the utmost respect for were Dave Willis and Wayne Hubert. And a lot of what they influenced me by the manner in which they presented themselves. They came across as professional, they came across as ethical, and they came across as unbiased. And they were like this when they talked to fellow professionals, when they talked to the public, and when they dealt with university administrators. And I can't think of anything higher that any of us want to attain than to be professional, ethical, and unbiased. Additionally, these two gentlemen were quality researchers and excellent at the training of the next generation of fish biologists.
Well, Jack, did you know or work with any of the inductees that have passed? And could you tell us a little bit about your time spent with them?
Well, Bob Ditton is one of the deceased members of the Hall of Excellence that I had the good fortune and the opportunity to work with. Bob was doing some of the first human dimensions work in fisheries in the country. And when he was at, I think it was Texas A&M, is where Bob was. And so I was in contact with Bob because I felt that we needed to incorporate human dimensions into our management work in Minnesota. And so he was the gentleman that I contacted. He came up and put on some seminars in our statewide training session and did some of the first surveys for us on the human dimensions side in Minnesota. And I think that today most people around the country are seeing the value of incorporating human dimensions work into the business of fish management. And it goes a long way toward public buy-in to utilize this. Because of the work that Bob was doing in Texas and that he did with us, after the Cooperative Fish and Wildlife Research Unit in Minnesota was established, we had the opportunity, when we went to hire the assistant unit leader, we had the opportunity to fill that vacancy with a gentleman who had a human dimensions background. And I would suggest that the work that Dave Fulton, who's that assistant unit leader, has done in human dimensions work has enabled the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources to move ahead to better manage the resource with the full support of the public.
Outstanding. I understand you spent some time or knew Dave Willis.
I knew Dave Willis when he was still a field biologist in Kansas, so I guess that makes me ancient. And then Dave had left Kansas and he went to South Dakota State University as a faculty member. And I remember that he was certainly a leader in our profession of trying to get standardized sampling. I think you look at a couple of the books that he was the editor of in fisheries, it moves us along that way. And he was also heavily involved in educating students. And I would suggest that I think he did an excellent job in both of these areas. His professionalism and active involvement in the American Fisheries Society, I think, set a sterling example for his students. And it was always a joy to interview and hire his students, as they were so well prepared and understood what fish management was all about. They also understood the value of the American Fisheries Society, and we didn't have to twist arms for them to become or to continue to be members. I found that it was always a treat to interact with Dave at the professional meetings or other get-togethers that we have, and I consider Dave a friend. And his early passing was certainly a loss.
Certainly, certainly. You also knew Ken Carlander.
I had met Ken a few times at meetings, and I guess I have always referred to Ken as one of the true lions of our profession. He was right up there at the pinnacle. He was a true gentleman, and he always had time to interact with you, no matter what level you were, whether you were either socially or professionally. And I've always treasured the time that when my wife and I were in Alaska in 1989 for the AFS meeting, we were taking the train from Fairbanks to Denali, and Ken and his wife were sitting across the aisle from us. And Margie and I had the opportunity to spend that train ride most enjoyably visiting with Ken and his wife. The other little tidbit that always surprised me is I never realized that Ken had worked for the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources very early in his career, because I have found records on Rainy Lake, which is in northern Minnesota, in 1939 and 1940, signed by Ken Carlander.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you know that on the train ride?
No, I did not know that on the train ride.
Wow. That's excellent. I think you also, of the past members, you also knew Carl Sullivan.
Yes, I knew Sully. To me, he was AFS. I think he definitely personified it. He was the executive director that I first interacted with when I became involved with the society. And Carl was the executive director that oversaw the tremendous growth of the society and positioned AFS to become the leader that it is today. We all owe Carl a tremendous debt of gratitude for the vision and leadership that he provided to the society to move us in this direction.
Excellent. Jack, listen, it was an honor for me to interview you. I can't state that enough. And thank you for doing this on behalf of the Hall of Excellence in the Fish Management section of the American Fisheries Society. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, enjoyed it, Darrell. We always have a good time when we get together.
Yep.